let's stop there for a minute, because I think for some younger viewers that don't quite might not understand what you're saying here, the communication between the officers and the 1970s, 1980s gay community. What was the atmosphere like? What was Capitol Hill like?
Well, you got to remember, and for those who are younger don't realize this, but Seattle has not always been this way. You know, Seattle was a very gritty city back in the 80s. It was had just survived a major recession. Gas prices were up. The buildings up on Capitol Hill were oftentimes abandoned tenements or buildings that had been built 100 years earlier, which had not been maintained. A lot of fire traps. You had crime was running fairly rampant in the city at the time. A lot of violence, a lot of homicides. The cocaine wars had started years before. And you had a area of Seattle which was well known to be the gay area. So you not only had the people that lived in the community, but you had other groups, including people from outside Seattle who would come up to Capitol Hill and watch the show. I mean, it was even through my own eyes. I had worked in Capitol Hill. I had never been around this kind of situation before, in that you were dealing with a large number of people that didn't oftentimes agree with each other's politics, and you had a lot of the political leaders that were speaking out on behalf of the gay community, which were at odds with other political leaders and religious leaders that weren't in favor of that. Between that and the drug use of the Central District in Capitol Hill, the violence was a result of that. You had the punk rockers taking over Broadway en masse with their own social statements. You had, like I said, high crime. And you just basically had a big cauldron that was bubbling, just waiting to boil over, and it did frequently.
And the gay community still believes, a lot of people, that the police are intrinsically against the community. What would you say to that?
Well, I would say what I would say to any group of people that feel that way. I think a lot of the hatred that people have towards the police is not from personal experience, but from handed down versions of incidents that may or may not have happened. I'm not saying that some of these incidents don't happen, but I think that it's like anything else. When you tell somebody a story and it gets handed down tenfold, that story is nothing like the original version.
And add alcohol.
And you add alcohol to that, and let's face it, we have the most conflict with people who disobey the law. And if you're breaking the law, whether you're gay or straight, you're going to have contact with the police, and it is not always going to go well. I mean, and that has not changed a lot from the time policing started in this city or anywhere else. I think when you add the mix of people that have been oppressed for years, you've got kind of an intrinsic feeling that everybody has that there are going to be problems, and that the police, being a representative of the government, are the most visible form of problems that you may incur. So I think since I've been on the department that we have got a very professional group of objective officers. I think back in the 80s when I first got hired, you were dealing with a cultural shift in that you had veteran officers that were in their 50s or higher that came from a generation of the Depression, World War II vets, and military people who were hired right out of World War II or the Korean War, who were at odds with the vets who got out of the Vietnam War, who were much younger, and that culture clash started there because the police department's a reflection of the rest of the community.
It's interesting you say this because we've found talking to people, and I know a lot of young people are going to be surprised by this because I definitely was, Drew as well. A lot of the activists and a lot of the people that ended up becoming important in our community started with the anti-war movement.
They did.
Because I was like, where did you learn activism? They're like, anti-Vietnam. So you're saying they were at odds because they were younger and speaking out against military service? Or?
They were speaking out against the establishment. And whether it's younger people speaking out against the older generation, their parents' generation, whether it's more liberal stances from the conservative views of the generations prior. I mean, there's all kinds of flashpoints, whether it's gay issues or black issues or issues involving whether we should be fighting overseas. I mean, it doesn't take much to cause debate on a variety of social issues, and the police or the gay issue is one more of those that is discussed and done through activism in a number of ways. You know, when I first started seeing people protesting about a variety of issues back then, including the gay community, I was looking at that as a young person going, boy, why are they so angry? And then I didn't understand why they would be you know, making a big, huge scene. And then as you get older, you start realizing that constructive activism it changes things for the better, usually. And so not ever being around gay people coming up to Capitol Hill, I'm seeing, you know, people that were activists. You know, my view of a gay person when I was 15 years old was the same as yours might have been, okay? The media portrays gay people as being, you know, dykes on bikes, or men dressing up as women, or sexual promiscuity. And you combine that with the early 80s dynamics of, you know, the AIDS crisis that, you know, as a teenager I didn't understand. And it was clearly fearful for me because nobody had the answers. And then you have the president speaking out against the issue, and you have the religious right speaking out against the issue. And so me trying to form my own identity, coming up to Capitol Hill when the bathhouses were still in full swing, when you had sexual promiscuity, which was a carryover from the freedom of the 60s and 70s.
Right.
You know, I'm asking myself, gee, is this what it means to be gay? Until I started meeting people in the community that I could actually sit down and talk to, and it dispelled a lot of my fears that I had, even though I was gay. And you can imagine what the straight community does when they see this same type of media attention. You know, people are afraid of what they don't know.
Yeah.
And until they take the time to get to know people who are, whether it be black or gay or whatever, I mean, you're going to stay in that mindset until something changes it.
I think we're also, the gay community has been extremely visible. The activists that have been trained are really good at knowing when to get media aware and all that kind of stuff, so I think that obviously doesn't help. I mean, when we did the Rainbow Crosswalk, when we announced it, it was Cairo's most commented on Facebook post. Blew our minds. We just said we wanted a little rainbow. And it was like the people being afraid of what they don't know. I mean, it was crazy the stuff that people said. They'd rather jaywalk, that we should get rainbow nooses and hang ourselves. I mean, and we were shocked. We just won marriage equality. So it's kind of like there's this underlining, you know, Seattle's very good at being quiet about some stuff until it boils over. So